it's a project that throughout has been propelled by threats and the threat of exclusion. I don't see this honestly as a technological project, especially since many parts of this technology are failing, and they've been failing from the beginning.
Is AI the solution to government problems or private companies' golden ticket to take over public infrastructure? The India AI Impact Summit is leaning in hard on concepts that are really important, but also really often co-opted. In partnership with AI Now and Apti Institute, we've produced a series of interviews with some incredible people who live and breathe substance, analysis, and meaningful action into these concepts. In this interview, I am talking with Usha Ramanathan about digital public infrastructure and AI, which is something that's going to be bandied about at the summit. And Usha, I think, can help us break down what it is we mean when we use these terms and what we should be on the lookout for in the upcoming summit. Usha Ramanathan is an Indian intellectual and human rights activist, and she's written extensively about the Aadhaar project, raising concerns about privacy risks and challenging notions of techno-solutionism that have plagued the project for the past 15 years. So let's get into it with Usha Ramanathan and discuss digital public infrastructure and AI.
So one of the main flagship projects that gets mentioned constantly by the Indian state as an example of what's possible if only we embrace digital futures is Aadhaar, which you have worked on extensively since its inception. And I feel like you probably have opinions about the extent to which Aadhaar has been a manifestation of the promises that the state made. Do you want to talk a little bit about, let's say, what harms have been caused by Aadhaar and sort of how you see a continuity of political vision when you think about Aadhaar and some of these conversations about AI?
It's not like we approached the UID project, the Aadhaar project, with with any kind of skepticism when it first began, because they said it was about helping the poor get an identity so that they could access what was available to them in terms of support from the state and from basically from the state. And in the 1990s, we had the first introduction of the voter ID card. And that seemed, initially, we were all very worried because we were saying that, the poor live in a twilight zone of legality. It's very difficult to be poor and to be legal. So we've always felt that shadows were important, that the state should be transparent, but people should be able to find a few shadows to secure themselves. And tracking every person down and giving them an ID seemed like it could be a problem for the poor. But actually, we found in the 90s, that card did not harm them. In fact, it helped them in quite a few ways, including in establishing that they had a right to the city, for instance, because they'd been there since the card had been issued. So various things happened in that process. So when the UID project, the other project, was originally spoken about, in fact, it was hardly spoken about. It was almost like, there were no big news reports on it. There was hardly anything. How we got to know about it was because they held meetings with what they call civil society actors to introduce us to the concept, and I think basically to co-opt us into making the project work, because we have access to certain kinds of people to whom they don't have necessarily an immediate access. For instance, migrant workers, people working with migrant workers, they said, if you can come in, if you can, onboard onto this project, it will help. So we didn't go into it with skepticism because we thought that maybe this will be another such where it will help the poor. But the first meeting that we had told us that the ambitions were very different. What the ambitions were, we didn't know. But this much was clear, that the people who were working on the project really didn't know the poor at all. And it seemed like they were shooting from the shoulders of the poor. We asked some questions, and the questions only received irritation in answer. And you have to investigate these things. And the project started without a white paper, blue paper, green paper, whatever color paper you want. So nobody knew where this project, what this is supposed to do, what it entitled people to, what are the risks that might be involved in it. But very soon, as the documents started emerging, for instance, there was a biometric standard committee which produced a report, which was to say how they are going to adopt biometrics in the project. We realized that this is a project which is being rolled out on a national scale, but without really knowing either the science or the sociology of it. And that made us ask many questions. And I think the reason that the skepticism grew, is because we haven't received those answers till today. And the problems that were hypotheses in 2009, for instance, that old people, people work, people, working classes who are doing manual work, people who work with chemicals, women, people who don't have other identities which can help them identify themselves onto the system, all the problems that we had anticipated, and the question, of course, of convergence of data, the question of what will be done with the information that is collected about us. If private entities are going to have it, what is it that they'll be using it for? Is it all right for personal data to become uh, widespread like this and being handed over to different people? These were all hypotheses we were all concerned. They were concerns at that time. But over a period of time, we have seen that it has, in fact, every one of the things that we thought would be a problem is indeed a problem. And it's not just that. I mean, there were many things that we could anticipate at that time, which we are finding now as it's been rolled out, that it's causing a lot of problem. It's causing problem for the poor, that's true. It's also produced something like, from the judiciary, when the project was being heard, we went through two major constitutional cases in just this case, which the first constitutional case was around privacy, and it was a resounding statement from the court of 9 judges who said that privacy is not just a constitutional right; it's an inherent right, and it wasn't given to us; it's only recognized, and so that it can't be taken away. They also said, like it is true of all rights, that it's not absolute in the sense that there are some conditions in which it might have to be chipped into a bit. And they introduced the doctrine of proportionality, which meant that you can't just take the right away, saying that, oh, it doesn't matter because we have other concerns that are of greater importance. And the interesting thing is that creating these kind of databases, which are identifying people, the 3 words that they use, which were very significant even to begin with. The first was unique. And we thought they were saying unique because of biometrics, till we realized that they were talking actually about uniquely identifying every person, every individual through a number. So the number was what was unique, not biometrics. And that makes sense because they didn't know then if biometrics would work. And there is a very interesting history to this, to what has happened since and where we are today, where basically biometrics is deeply faulty. They keep shifting from fingerprint to iris to facial recognition. None of it seems to be working. So, somewhere around 2016, they made the decision that they would shift to OTPs, which basically means every person should have a mobile phone. That mobile phone should be registered with a UIDAI. The very interesting thing about this project, which I don't think I expected that when the project began, because usually any business has a plan and there will be something that you'll see which kind of its own rationality, whether we think the rationality is reasonable or not, there is its own rationality. Here you find that at every step they were changing track, they were going somewhere else because something was not working. Okay, you try something else. So it began with saying, okay, let's do fingerprints. Then they said, oh, that's not enough. Let's add iris. Then they said, okay, you don't have to give your email address and your phone number necessarily, it's optional. And then they said, you actually can't function without it. So you can't update your biometrics unless you have a phone which is registered with that. The system is so messed up. And somewhere along the way, they said, we'll have a virtual ID. Nobody knew what on earth it was. Then they said, you must have an Aadhaar vault so that you keep all these numbers safe. Nobody knows what that is. Suddenly, one government will say, oh, we are going to have Aadhaar vaults. And I'm like, I thought this was said in 2016. What are you saying? You're telling us in 2025 that you might have it. So there is an incredible irrationality with this, along with which there is also this very interesting thing about this project that they do not have a feedback loop. So you're experimenting, but I can't even call it an experiment because in an experiment you're trying to figure out more and more and to see what the fact is. But here it is actually pushing a project, making it mandatory and saying everybody has to get onto it. We figure out how to make it work or not. That's our business. But you give us all your data. So while the case was on, actually, we had people die, a child die, for instance, because she was not, the parents weren't able to link up the public distribution system where through which they got food with the Aadhaar. And what you had was a child dying after 8 days of hunger because they just weren't able to get the food. They needed that state support. Even that didn't move them to reconsider what they were doing. So, I mean, when other countries decide that they should accept this system, that whole digital public infrastructure is based on the Aadhaar system, I think they really need to study what has happened here before. It's not a safe route to go for the people. There is another thing for the state, which is also not a safe route to go, but that's a different story.
So it didn't get any better in the progression of the project with trying something, listening, iterating. It was a constant push and advocacy for a technology that wasn't yet defined, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah, the thing is that it depends on how you identify your targets. So if you identify it by saying, I have so many people on my database, never mind what kind of information I have about them, never mind what it is doing for them. For instance, if everybody's mobile phone number necessarily needs to be on it, we don't even know if everyone has a mobile phone. We don't know if they have to keep changing it because they're too poor to be able to continue on the same mobile phone. They get the phone, they get the number, they pay whenever they can, they keep it when they can. Many women don't have mobile phones. Children should not be having, but some do. Many don't. During COVID, we saw what it did to the poor when they could not have a mobile phone, and many couldn't afford it. So we are talking actually in a country uh, where first of all poverty is endemic and the level of literacy is also, it's a climb. We've not reached where we need to reach. But it's not only in countries where this is a problem this kind of a project could be a problem, because it'll affect the poor and in one kind of way, but it affects everybody in various kinds of ways, which we can of course talk about.
Yeah, I mean, my next question is focused on this idea that in other countries, we'll take the U.S. for example, AI projects and these kind of innovation projects have kind of been cover for austerity and have been cover for sort of cutting social welfare programs. And I'm wondering if you have reflections. Does that resonate in the Indian context when you see the state sort of pushing technical projects? Is there usually an underlying mission that they're trying to transform the social welfare state without necessarily saying directly that that's what they're trying to do?
If I could just say one word on this, calling it a technical project. I know that they are using some aspects of technology, but I'm not sure at all that this is any great technical project. This is really a project of shepherding people, controlling people, bullying, telling people if you're not on this system, then you're going to be out of it, and then you might lose your citizenship someday. You'll certainly lose your voting rights. I mean, it's a project that throughout has been propelled by threats and the threat of exclusion. So I'm not sure I don't see this honestly as a technological project, especially since many parts of this technology are failing and they've been failing from the beginning. In India, we had to make this decision at one time in 2015. The government went to the court and said that people of this country don't have a right to privacy. It was a shocking moment for the country. They said, oh, nobody in this country is bothered about privacy. And we realized that, yeah, it's true. Then you told us that we didn't have the right to privacy. We didn't need to bother with it. But the moment you tell us we don't have it, then we wonder first of all, what do you mean we don't have the right? And secondly, why do you want us not to have the right? What is it that, when they keep
You wanted
asking us,
to.
what do you have to hide? The question really is, why do you fear if we have the right to privacy? So this idea that a whole population is a threat to the state. And so you have to keep proving that you're not a threat. You have to keep establishing that you're not, it's not resulting in leakage, or, you are not responsible for the state losing resources, money. This inversion where a state has to be answerable to a people and, instead people become constantly answerable to the state in a way in which the state can make you legible. If you're illegible to the state, then, you're illegitimate. So I think that this is a different kind of project from what you have, say, in the US, where in the US, I see the problem for us here. The problem seems like this, that big tech is really controlling so much, and they're controlling so much all over the world. And like here, there too, there is this idea that we need to burn our legacies and move on. That, all the ways in which we used to live are useless ways in which to live. And we make a distinction here, for instance, between philosophy of technology and the philosophy for technology. Philosophy of technology is what is being offered to us, where they say, people are inadequate. The whole idea of human augmentation, that you've got to augment the human being by having a relationship with the machine, because on your own, you're quite useless. And this is a psychology that seems to have really percolated so much that we feel that the technology is, whatever it produces will be better than what we produce and what we are. And the idea of data as being something that private companies use, the state has stepped back from many of those things. And that, the greatly interesting thing about this is how all those big tech companies are constantly telling us that they are not just doing a business with technology, using technology. They are saying what we are doing, when we gather all the data, we can now tell you when you will fall sick. We can tell you when you'll be able to breathe. So the idea that not only are you inadequate, you don't know anything about yourself. Tech does, big tech does. So they are entering areas where, tech companies should not even be. We wouldn't even have thought that such a thing would happen, where they're saying education, health, finance, all of that and more is going to be something that big tech alone can handle, and that it should all go through big tech. And big tech should know everything about everyone, therefore. So I think the issues are somewhat different, partly because in India, actually, the technology companies here haven't managed to create as many products as they would have liked to. That's our saving grace.
So, what do you think the motivations are for these? I don't want to call them technical projects. These sort of social, political, technical systems that the state is pushing. Like, what do you think the motivation is?
See, the part of it you can see that when you go back to the dot-com bust, and you see that they could see themselves scaling great heights, and then actually it goes bust. And there is a certain thing with this use of technology where it can produce certain efficiencies, and the state would be interested in producing those efficiencies, but then it has to be done by treating those technologies as a servant of that project, not as the master of the people. And I think that's the shift that has happened, and that was made possible because of for instance, one of the things that we see in this is the close collaboration of the state and big corporations. This is something which is really anti-democratic, because it's not accounting for what people are, what people need, what people are saying. In fact, it's shutting people up. The other thing is, I don't know how far I will go down this route, but I'm interested. In fact, Kenneth Kavanaugh, I forget his name here, the gentleman who wrote The Curse of Cash. He had an article recently in one of our newspapers, meaning like it was one of the syndicated things which had come in our newspapers. And he says, so what is it that big tech wants? And then what do they all have in common? And in brackets, he says, other than there not being so many people in this world. I'm paraphrasing really badly. But and I can understand this because I remember seeing a program on Bill Gates asking, who is Gates? Who is Bill Gates? And there is a little thing there where he's showing a chart, and the chart has the population in 1900, and then it has the population going all the way up to 2000, which is, of course, it was a huge increase.
Exponential, yeah.
Yeah. And then he says that he and Melinda wondered whether they should take vaccines to Africa, because if you took vaccines there, then more children will live. And but then they decided, no, that's not correct. They should take vaccines to Africa because, then the parents will have, once children survive, the parents will have less reason for having children. So it will demotivate them from having too many children. So when I heard this and when I saw this, I was thinking, even for people who, if you think of God as an idea, this is the kind of, it's a new God. It's an idea that is emerging with this new God. Who's this God that believes that they should decide whether children should live or die? It really made me wonder at how people see such a crowded planet and who they want to see disappear. I mean, I'm not talking about extinction physically, but you control whether they exist or not in various spaces. And I don't think initially I used to feel that this seems too excessive. Stop thinking like this. Till I realized actually there are signs of this all around us. We can't keep our eyes shut.
Yeah. Going specifically towards the summit, and then I have so many questions for you outside outside of this. But going back to a more narrow summit thing, is thinking a little bit about AI for good as a construct, which is a very attractive development phrase that's been thrown around for the last few years by Gates and others. Do you think it's an oxymoron?
Many people have said this, that it's neither artificial nor intelligence. And I think we need to take that a little seriously. But what I find really strange is that all these people who are creating AI, who are using all the data that they can scrape from anywhere, first of all, there's a whole amount of, the foundation is unethical. So I always been wondering whether it's possible to have something ethical on an unethical foundation. I'm not sure. I don't think so, but I'm not sure. But what amazes me is that every one of them has said that AI could lead to human extinction. It's not even like it's one or two people here or there. Thousands of them are signing on to documents saying that it could lead to human extinction. There are people like Gebru who've been saying, why are you waiting for some human extinction later? You have it happening now in all kinds of ways, and discrimination and exclusion and non recognition. So I remember reading a book where they were talking about facial recognition technology and how they had, one of the companies had given it to the police, and the police were not reading it right because, I mean, they were reading it right, but the technology was not reading it right for them. And the company basically said, yeah, that's true. There could be a problem, but all we need is everyone get onto the database. And then we'll be able to do a good job. We can do a good job of it. So, this idea that all of us should become servile to a technology and that servility will produce peace and calm and happiness for us is such a, even in mythology, you don't find this. So, I don't know how in reality we are expected to accept this. The other thing is, I think a lot of the ways in which people have lived through the centuries, it's towards freedom and it's towards control over our own lives. We have actually created things like patriarchy to say that no, women shouldn't feel comfortable being free. And the women's movement has been about saying, just get off our backs. We need to get on with our lives. So it's a battle that we are fighting all the time for. It's a kind of self-realization that even if I make mistakes, let it be my own mistakes. Let it not be somebody else's stupid mistakes. So in the middle of all of this churn where people are trying to find their voice, their life, what they would be happy doing, their sense of right and wrong. I mean, today it's so warped. The kind of sense of right and wrong that we have is so warped. So, and a lot of this warping is happening with the help of technology. So why would I think that AI can actually, that AI is the answer to good? And I think I watched a program with the Dalai Lama and was deeply moved by it because there were these people who are producing technologies for people who are maimed, who lost children, who've lost their limbs, they can't move. They've created prosthetics for people who can't speak. They've created various kinds of things through which they can communicate. And they were showcasing all of this to the Dalai Lama, and it was really beautiful to watch. At the end of that, the people who had created this asked him, so what do you have to say about all of this? And he said, it's a wonderful thing you're doing. It's very good that, all these children who would not have had this opportunity will have it now. But you must also acknowledge that you can't do this for all of the world. Can you take it to all of Africa and do it? Can you take it to all of the countries where, in Afghanistan, for instance, where during the war, people have been needing prosthetics forever because they've lost limbs? He said, you can't do it for everybody, but there is one thing that can go around the world, and it doesn't require very much, and that's compassion. After technology entered our lives, we don't hear this language. There is something wrong with the world that it is creating if this is what we are losing.
Okay, I have one more question that's summit related, which is what's your most ungenerous interpretation of why AI for good is so mainstreamed in this moment for the Indian state and for the people that will be assembled at the summit?
For the Indian state, it's not difficult to see what it is. It's like we've gone through processes of development where we tried, building an economy on the resources that were available to us, which is land, water, minerals. And it's been a battle because, people live on that land. It's not, we have no land that's just waste. There are people everywhere. And so if you take that away and you're displacing people, so we've had many movements over the years, about plundering the earth. We've had things about mass displacement, which is not just about acquiring land, but actually, hundreds of thousands of people being displaced for projects, pitch battles around it. We've had, we've kind of, people who are in the movements have forced changes in the law where the state can't just go and take what they want. Through colonialism, we had many of these resources being taken over by the state, as were forests. And then we've had a whole movement here for forest rights to be recognized. So these are all, in one sense, they are limited resources. It's not like, you can't, you have to make choices. Data seemed to be, it's been sold to them. I don't think the state itself saw it, but it's been sold to them by business interests that, with data, you can do many things. 10 people can work on the same data at the same time, and the data will still remain. And that's the one economy. So we actually had the chief spokesperson of the UID project, Mr. Nathan Nilekani, at one time saying that, we had, when we first began in the 50s and 60s, we had this idea of trickle down, which meant that if you, develop enough, then it'll trickle down to everyone. And he had this, 60 years, 70 years later, he had this, 60 years later, he had this grand idea that actually what we need is a trickle up economy. That this is a country where, people are not wealthy, but they have something that can generate wealth. And that's data. So everyone should give their data up so that it trickles up, and then they will make an economy out of it. This is the dream that's been sold to the Indian state. And the Indian state today wants to be leading in something. And it seems like they can do it in the digital space, which is also why talking about, providing platforms for actually resolving the issues is proving a problem, because it will do away with, it'll strip it of its, of the kind of reputation that they are trying to build for it as being this great, this great business, which is going to change and revolutionize the world. You can't afford to talk about people getting excluded. You can't afford to talk about who these people are who are getting excluded, who the most marginalized. You can't talk about data and how data is being used to track people. It's called convergence here. So you don't have to have the UI, the Aadhaar itself, database itself doesn't have to have all manner of information about people. This is the ubiquity. You put the number everywhere and you can garner all that information. So it's getting the state, giving the state an ambition, as the state of being in control of a people, but internationally, globally, to be a leader of these kinds of digital technologies. And you can only push this narrative if you are completely clear that you don't want to acknowledge the problems in it. The very interesting thing for me is you're having all these AI summits. I would have thought, when we discussed issues of this, of whatever nature we were working on, when we had conferences and meetings, it was to have it out amongst ourselves to see what is it and what is the position we are in, what should be done next. But it seems now like it's only marketing all the way. You have to market that this is great, that's great. And it's happening, like I said, in the middle of people saying, oh my God, AI, it could lead to all kinds of harms and all kinds of, possibilities of human extinction. So to me, it seems like there is a severe need for psychiatrists to enter this space and do something with people who are so completely disconnected even with their own thoughts.
Thanks again to Usha for joining me for this conversation. And as a reminder, this episode is part of a series we're doing in partnership with AI Now and the Opti Institute called Reframing Impact, AI Summit 2026. We've got interviews with some incredible guests, and you can find the full series on our channel. So do check it out, and thanks for joining.